Good evening, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast, I promise you, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on the old Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2_ANT. Give me a follow on the old Twitter. If follows aren't your thing, that is completely fine. I'll take the deed to your house instead. So whichever's easier, whichever you are more willing to part with, a follow on Twitter or the deed to your house. Either way, I'm cool with it. Cover One is, of course, the network that Disguise Coverage operates under. So please rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage, to Cover One, all that good stuff. Rate, review, subscribe. Drop a like here on this video if you're watching here live or if you are watching later. You'd be surprised how far likes go in terms of helping myself and this entire channel to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. Got a fun episode for you tonight, although I'm probably biased. Gabriel Davis is someone who, I don't want to say came on the scene in 2021 because he had a good rookie campaign and was someone that I think people expected a jump from, but to end the year in the playoffs with a record-setting performance in that divisional round, coupled with several of the metrics that we're going to talk about tonight and several of the plays that, just showcase his ability on film. There's a lot to go over, and we're going to talk about Gabriel Davis tonight. We're also going to talk about the Bills receivers as a whole going into this offseason and why his ascension to that level of wide receiver 2 for this team was so important in 2021. But not only that, why it's important for 2022, given the roster construction and the personnel on this team. So got a lot planned for this episode tonight, all focusing on Mr. Gabriel Davis. And for those of you riding with me live on this episode, you guys know how we like to do here on Disguise Coverage. Any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, anything like that, throw them up in the chat. I try to get to anything and everything that's physically possible. I appreciate all the banter and back and forth and all the engagement. It is genuinely tremendous. And as always, not just to plug it, but super chats always catch my eye. They will automatically be brought up. Interruptions, regardless of what I'm talking about, super chats get brought up and we go from there. But before we jump into some things for this episode, as you guys know, this show sponsored by One Pie Pizza. Find them on the old Twitter at One Pie Pizza WNY. The online menu can be found in the episode show notes, whether you're watching here on YouTube, whether you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms. Good people. They make good pizza, delicious sweet sauce pie, homemade blue cheese. If you get a half sheet pie today or tomorrow, Thursday, February 17th, if you mention that Cover One sent you, get a free 16-ounce of potato salad with your half sheet pie. Nice little promo from the folks over there at One Pie. Potato salad's delicious, but their pizza is so good. The pepperoni is so good. The cheese, the sauce, the blue cheese. Oh, I just have so much respect for people who make homemade blue cheese, and they do a tremendous job of just allowing you to treat yourself with their deliciousness. And they're good people on top of it. They do a lot for charity and for the community and for humanity as a whole, like all jokes aside. So they're great people. Go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. I see a couple comments coming through. Wanted to pull some things. Ferris saying I should watch the Brandon Bean interview done by Eric Wood. Very informative on what his plan is for the offseason. Daniel saying that Gabriel Davis is going to be big in the Bills' offense this season, in my opinion. Jason's comment here, with Sanders gone, hopefully, the Bills need to add to the receiver room. Davis did well, but you can't hang your hat on that. You have to keep adding weapons. I wanted to bring that comment up and really show it. Also, hello, Daniel. I see you said hello to me. Hello to everybody in the chat live. Appreciate you guys. I wanted to pull up Jason's comment because it ties into my initial point when it comes to Gabriel Davis and this wide receiver group. Timeout. I got to do an interruption. Seth says, Anthony, Christmas is over. It's the middle of February now. Seth, my man. I don't know if this is your first time here, and if it is, welcome to Disguise Coverage. I'm Anthony. Nice to meet you. The tree stays all year round. If you notice, there's red garland on that tree. If you also notice, if you're able to zoom in and look a little closer, there's hearts on that garland. You know why? Because it's a February tree. It's a Valentine's Day tree right now. In March, it'll be decorated with more green, maybe some leprechaun stuff. Why? For St. Patrick's Day. In April, we'll get some pastels going, some pastel yellows, some blues, some pinks. Why? Because it'll become an Easter tree. The tree stays up all year round. Jason gets it. Power to the tree. The tree stays up all year round. I changed the garland and the decorative features to match the current month that we are in. The little tree never goes away. And then come Christmas time, the little tree goes over there, and I put a bigger Christmas tree there. I love Christmas. The little tree stays up all year round. So I appreciate your feedback, Seth, and for you letting me know that Christmas is over, but Christmas is still going on where it counts. That's right here in my heart, and that's why that tree will stay up for forever. But I appreciate you. I'm going to grab a couple more comments before I go through. Jason M., fan of the show, appreciate you, saying, I love Davis as wide receiver 3. He is almost always better than his matchup there. I don't know if he has a wide receiver 2 skill set. Ooh, very interesting comment. I think you're one of the few, and I'm not saying you're wrong or this is a bad comment, but I think you're one of the few who aren't fully aboard the Gabriel Davis hype train. I think a lot of people are just full bore Gabriel Davis wide receiver 2, but I like that thought. Yeah, see, Daniel gets it. He says at Seth, you're showing your rookie status. You really are. You really are. Traz, this one hurts my heart. Maybe the tree is why we lost to the Chiefs in OT. Why would you say that? Why would you do that? Why would you cut me so deep like that and just bring that kind of negativity here? And it's also slander, libel, horrifically mean. How dare you? How dare you? But to each their own. But back to the Gabriel Davis talk. And before, again, we dive into that, I want to talk about this position grouping as a whole. So if you're looking at this Bills position group right now, currently under contract, forget about what moves you think the Bills will make in free agency. Forget about what moves you think the Bills will make in the draft, anything like that. Right now, if we're looking at this Buffalo Bills position group, the wide receivers, you're looking at a group that has under contract Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, Marquez Stevenson, Tanner Gentry, Isaiah Hodgins. 6 wide receivers under contract right now. 3 of them proven and legitimate. Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis. The other 3, not so much. Say everything stays. Say nothing changes on this wide receiver, personnel grouping, in this wide receiver personnel grouping, on the roster, whatever have you. The only known quantities that you have from an NFL productivity standpoint are Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis. That's part of the reason why Davis's rise this past year was so important, because you now have a solid 3 going into this upcoming season. I appreciate the donation, Traz, and the comments. Sorry for the hurt. Love you guys. I appreciate you. No worries. But thank you for apologizing. If you also, I'm very superstitious. If you could also retract your statement, I would also appreciate that very much. But thank you for the super chat. Thank you for tuning in. That's very funny. You look at this position group, and last year at this time, Manny Sands came in, and it was like, okay, what a solid top 4 the Bills have. But it was clear, I think, in most fans' minds, that it would be Diggs and Sanders, and Beasley was that wide receiver 3, but he was basically a starter because he's a slot receiver, just like the year before. Beasley was wide receiver 3 or the slot, but he was really wide receiver 2. He had an all-pro year, got an all-pro vote in 2020. And we saw how this past season progressed. And again, now going in, right, there's only 6 receivers under contract. That's with Cole Beasley staying. So Gabriel Davis, as it stands right now, has a very prominent and very important role in this Bills offense, because as of right now, as it stands, again, he's wide receiver 2. If you want to say that Cole Beasley is more important, or Cole Beasley will get more targets, whatever have you, yada, yada, fine. Gabriel Davis is a starter in this Bills offense right now. 1, tremendously important. 2, the way he's able to be used in that wide receiver 2 role, which we are going to get into tonight, is also very important. So if everything stays a status quo right now with those 6 wide receivers, you go into this offseason, the Bills are going to need depth, just need functional, versatile depth. If you tuned into the Cover One film room last night with myself, Eric Turner, and Mr. Kendall Mursky, thank you. If you didn't tune in, what's wrong with you? It's the best film room going for Bills content, and the best film room going in general, just for football knowledge, getting everybody, caught up on terminology and football knowledge and education, all that kind of stuff, a little peek behind the scenes, the whys behind the whats and the hows behind the whats and all that kind of stuff. But we talked about some free agent targets for the Bills, given the current landscape. And we expect Cole Beasley to be back. And if that happens, again, Diggs, Beasley, Davis, but then you bring in functional depth. You bring in someone like a Byron Pringle, who we talked about last night on the show for a variety of reasons. And That's really all you need because your top three is rounded out. You bring in somebody who's a speed threat or has some sort of functional versatility in the niche game or the gadgetry game, or who offers a different dynamic than you have in that top three. But either, however you slice it, you're looking for depth, just functional depth, right? With the way the roster stands right now. If Cole Beasley leaves, which is a thought I know some Bills fans have taken a liking to, if you're not a fan of his production, if you're not a fan of who he is as a person, I know that's creeped into a lot of people's minds. Or if you're just not a fan of the cap hit that he's going to have and you think that money could be spent elsewhere. For the record, I am on the keep Cole Beasley train. I still think he's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. He's good against zone. He's good against man. The film shows it. The numbers show it. The metrics show it. Anything and everything. I know he's been banged up a little bit, and if health is a concern, that's fair. But all things equal, Cole Beasley is still a tremendous wide receiver and a tremendous slot receiver in the NFL and for the Buffalo Bills. And he's somebody that Josh Allen trusts. But say Cole Beasley leaves, you're putting more stress on this grouping. Now you're looking at 5 guys under contract, only 2 of them proven NFL caliber players, Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis in that sense. Then you're just looking at question marks with Marquez Stevenson, Tanner Gentry, Isaiah Hodgins. We were sitting here last year, talking about the potential rise of Isaiah Hodgins. I was very excited to see him in training camp, very excited to see him in the preseason. He got banged up. That carried its way through the preseason and the offseason, never really got a chance to shine. I'm hoping we could see some dividends, paid this offseason from Isaiah Hodgins, but you just have question marks in that wide receiver group. Cole Beasley is the domino that will affect this wide receiver group as a whole. Whether he stays, whether he goes, it changes how the Bills operate. It changes how they function in free agency and the draft when it comes to the wide receiver position, and thus how they function within who they target and who they acquire for this roster as a whole. But either way, at the end of the day, that rhymed. I didn't realize it. I'm a poet and I don't even know it, but I can show it. Gabriel Davis, what he did in 2021, just, we're going to start talking about how he did it and, talk about him, the player, and his journey. But from a team perspective, his rise in 2021 has been significantly important for this grouping. The Bills do not have a lot of youth at the wide receiver position that is also proven. As we've mentioned, they brought in Manny Sands last year. Even with Manny Sands back, they were still a top-heavy group. There wasn't a lot of depth from top to bottom. And you look at how he produced in the back end of the year. Jason, I see the stats that you threw out there. I got some stats for you coming up as well that's going to speak to how things changed for him. We saw what the Bills did embracing Gabriel Davis as their wide receiver 2 towards the back end of the year. A lot of that had to do with Manny Sands getting banged up, Cole Beasley getting banged up. They weren't able to really use those 2 guys, and it created an opportunity and a door for Gabriel Davis. Just a little bit. It opened it a little. There was a little crack in the door, and he kicked that thing wide open, took advantage, functional in the run game, very functional in the pass game. Again, a playoff record, 4 touchdowns in the divisional round against Kansas City. But it's nice to know either way, the Bills have someone that's proven. Even if you view him as a wide receiver 3, that's fine. You still have someone in the top 3 of your depth chart to go along with an alpha in Stephon Diggs. A Stephon Diggs who was 5th in the NFL in targets in 2021, 6th in receptions, 8th in yards, 8th in touchdowns, averaging 11.9 yards per catch, averaging 11.8 on his average depth per target. So Stephon Diggs is a monster. We know he's the number 1. I think Gabriel Davis has solidified himself as the number 2, especially in this offense, given the scheme. We're going to talk about those reasons why as we start to move forward on this episode. But even if you don't think he's a 2 and he's a 3, that's fine. That's one less hole. That's one less question mark on this roster, which is a huge reason why his rise and his ascension is so important for this team, because it's one less hole they have to fill. If Gabriel Davis didn't show the production and the traits that he did in 2021, if somehow Cole Beasley doesn't stay, this position group is a question mark as a whole. Or even if Cole Beasley does stay, then you're looking at the top 2 and then more questions as a whole. But we're going to now deep dive into Gabriel Davis a little bit and talk about what he did. I want to grab some comments here from the chat. Seth says we should keep Cole and we should keep McKenzie. Jason said Davis had 599 yards in 2020, 549 this past season. Doesn't scream wide receiver 2 numbers. Maybe he gets more playing time targets next season. Jason also goes on to say, I will say I've learned that stats don't tell the whole story. That is very true. Jason says, I do think Davis is special. I would like more speed at wide receiver 2, but I do want him on the field at all times in all those 3 wide receiver sets we run. Very fair. Ooh, Terrence with an interesting comment here. Dawson Knox is the number 2 wide receiver, to be honest. Ooh, wow. JD with a very bold statement. And if this offense doesn't utilize, talking about Gabriel Davis, utilize him like he deserves to be utilized next season, it's going to be a shame. Gabe Davis is probably one of the top 2 one of the top wide receiver 2s in the league, I should say. Wow, very bold statement. I like it. See, that's why I was surprised earlier when, Jason M had that comment of like, I think he's more of a 3. I think most people have leaned into this wide receiver 2 role for Gabriel Davis. But we're going to talk about some numbers now for Mr. Gabriel Davis. And I brought some graphics tonight for the show, and I'm going to share them now. So if you notice there, the screen changed. And for those of you who are audio only, don't worry. I'm going to read those graphics and got them up on the screen. I'm going to take a drink of water here, so forgive me. But what's up on the screen here are some splits for Gabriel Davis in 2021. Splits in terms of what he looked like in weeks 1 through 13, and then from week 14 through the division round against Kansas City. So week 14 versus Tampa Bay through the division round versus Kansas City. So weeks 1 through 13, 12 games because we had the bye week. Gabriel Davis had 302 snaps, 25.2 snaps per game. He had 114 run blocking snaps, which was 37.7% of his overall snap count, which is an average of 9.5 run block snaps per game. And he had 188 pass snaps, meaning, times where he ran a route, went out into the pass there, which is a percentage of 62.3%, 15.7 per game, right? If you're watching, you'll see the drastic change between those numbers and the numbers on the right there. For those of you listening, I'm going to keep reading these as well. So we saw weeks 1 through 13, or you heard. Now, weeks 14 from that Tampa Bay game through the divisional round versus Kansas City, only 6 games. So half the amount of games versus weeks 1 through 13. 363 snaps. So in the 6 games from week 14 on, he had 61 more snaps than in the previous 12 games, right? So 363 snaps. That's an average of 60.5 snaps per game. In his first 12 games of the year, he had 25.2 snaps per game. So almost 35 more snaps per game. And then you look at the run blocking snaps, 134 run block snaps, which is 36.9% of the snap share, 22.3 run blocking snaps per game, and then 229 in the pass, which is 63.1%, good for 38.2 per game. I want to leave this graphic up there because I think it's really telling, right? The amount of production difference between the last 6 games and the first 12 is legitimately drastic. You're looking at 302 snaps the first 12 games versus 363 in the last 6. 25.2 snaps per game the first 12, 60.5 in the last 6. Part of it, like I mentioned earlier, was the injuries to Cole Beasley and Manny Sands. Cole Beasley gets banged up against Miami, and Manny Sands gets banged up in the middle of the year. They decide to not shut Manny down. They play him in week 16 against New England, but he was really kind of on a pitch count. They wanted to keep him fresh for the playoffs. And with Cole being banged up, combined with the Bills' ability to run the ball, we started to see a change in Gabriel Davis's usage. And you see it there from the run blocking snaps that he had in the last 6 games of the combined between the regular season and the playoffs. He filled a very functional role in the run game, right? You have somebody in Gabriel Davis who, he's 6'3", 212 pounds. He's long. He's got a thick frame, especially compared to the other Bills receivers, right? If you're comparing everybody, Gabriel Davis, as Spin just said in the chat, saying that Davis is our best blocking wide receiver. Yeah, if you are putting all the receivers next to each other, Gabriel Davis is going to look like a mountain among men with how Diggs and Beasley and Manny Sands are, and Isaiah McKenzie was, and Marcus Stevenson, whoever else you want to throw in there, right? So from a physical stature standpoint, Gabriel Davis is best suited for run blocking. But then he's actually good at it. He's able to wash down second level defenders and sometimes, guys on the line. He's able to execute crackback blocks. And because of his size and his willingness to block and his ability to execute in the run blocking game, the Bills were able to lean their head a little bit on some more play action and some more under center stuff. Because if Cole Beasley's in there or Manny Sands is in there or Isaiah McKenzie or any of these smaller receivers, even Stephon Diggs to a degree, right? It's not a complete tell to the defense that a pass is coming, but they can kind of surmise a little bit. And even if it's a run, defenders aren't really tremendously fearful of getting blocked by Manny Sands or Cole Beasley or Stephon Diggs or Isaiah McKenzie or any of that, right? You have to respect Gabriel Davis as a run blocker, right? So even if run is coming, you still have to execute against him because he's big and he's a good blocker. But on top of that, you're able to use that look and frame and skill set from Gabriel Davis and be able to play games with the defense and make them think, okay, is it going to be a pass? Is it going to be a run? What are you going to see on this play? And we saw the Bills execute that time and time again towards the back 6 games of this season because of what Gabriel Davis was able to do. They also did it with Dawson Knox a lot. Dawson Knox's run blocking took a very large leap, right, in 2021. And so the Bills were able to lean on Knox and Gabriel Davis and show these looks in these sets that, signaled run, but that ended up being play action pass. And it made this offense more versatile. It made them more multiple. It gave them a pivot versus the beginning of the year where it was just full spread offense. Let's lean into 4 and 5 wides and spread everybody out and have limited pass protection games up front and just not be able to really succeed. Gabriel Davis's ability in the run, first and foremost, started to change, right? The perception of him as a player and also his role in this offense. I love this comment here from Michael saying Coach Cromer should help run blocking from him too. Yes, 1,000%. The addition of Coach Cromer, Aaron Cromer, used to be with the Bills in 2014 and 15, most recently with the Rams from 2018 to 2020. I said it on Twitter. If the Bills do nothing with their offensive line grouping this offseason, if they run back literally the exact same roster on the offensive line as they did in 2021, they're already a better offensive line because of the addition of Coach Cromer. Even if they bring back the exact same guys, he raises everyone's floor. He raises everyone's ceiling. His ability to get the buy-in of his players to be able to maximize their strengths and mitigate their weaknesses is legitimately top-notch. The Bills' offensive line got better. He also, to your point here, he gets a lot out of his receivers, tight ends, and running backs when it comes to the blocking piece as well, whether it's pass pro or run blocking. So, yeah, I would expect Gabriel Davis's run blocking and Dawson Knox's run blocking to take a jump as well. So that's a very tremendous comment and notice there. But Davis, the injuries, so you're not able to really spread everybody out because Beasley's nicked up and Manny Sands is nicked up. And so it's like, okay, what do you do? And so it's like, well, one, we have to put Gabriel Davis in there because we're thin now because we don't have tremendous depth at this position. And the guys we do have are banged up, so we want to rest them a little bit. But then you get a guy, and this is where Brian Dable did a good job, you get a guy who are able to, again, utilize his skill set to not tip your hand to the defense. And that's what we started to see from Gabriel Davis really functioning in that run aspect. So that's number one, right? You had the injuries and you have this opportunity. Gabriel Davis snatches that opportunity, no pun intended, gets the ball and runs with it and is able to do a really good job. And now all of a sudden, the Bills offense is able to do things they weren't before, given his skill set and size and frame and everything. And one thing I wanted to mention too, I know a prevailing thought, especially when Gabriel Davis, exploded towards the back end of the year, prevailing thought was that, Manny Sands should have never taken snaps from Gabriel Davis, period. That, maybe the addition of Manny Sands stunted Gabriel Davis's growth, so on and so forth, all that stuff. I feel like people need to just, I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm not saying that it is at all. Emmanuel Sanders had a very strong start to the year. Even from a fantasy perspective, he was wide receiver 17 in fantasy from weeks 1 through 5 in the first 8 games. So the first 9 weeks of the year, 28 catches, 478 yards, 4 touchdowns. He ended up finishing the year for the Bills with a average depth of target of 16, which was the 4th highest amongst wide receivers with at least 30 targets. He was the Bills' deep threat in the beginning of the year. And I don't remember what week it was. I know it was in like the first 4 weeks. He had a miles per hour reach that was not only fastest for the Bills, but it was one of the fastest in the NFL. Like Manny Sands was cooking in the beginning of the year. And Josh wasn't on his game to start the year. There were some deep balls that Manny was open that Josh did not hit him on. And if he does, Manny Sands' numbers and role look completely different than they do in hindsight right now. But again, the opportunity was created. Gabriel Davis seized it, and we saw what he was able to do. And I think that's a huge thing for 2022. You've got a change in offense. No more Brian Dable. You've got Ken Dorsey. You've got Joe Brady. You've got Aaron Kromer. You've got a new staff on this offense. Dorsey comes from that Carolina tree with RPOs and running quarterback action and 12 personnel with multiple tight ends and big receivers who can block but also function in the play action. Gabriel Davis showing that he can function in that world, I think, is a big chess piece for Ken Dorsey in this offense going forward, in addition to what Aaron Kromer likes to do with 12 personnel in his history as an offensive coordinator and also as an offensive line coach. Oh, appreciate you, JD. JD saying great stats. I honestly had no idea he was so productive, but I do watching Manny live in KC in week 5. He was fired. That's awesome that you got to see that victory in week 5. And yeah, Manny had a good game against Kansas City, especially with that touchdown. Having the ability to run block and function in the pass for Gabriel Davis is a huge feather in his cap, and a main reason why I think he became wide receiver 2, right, is his ability to function in both worlds. I continue to talk about the theme of this offseason, how the Bills get better, this theme of rock, paper, scissors. You have to be able to throw all 3. You can win rock, paper, scissors just by throwing rock, but your odds significantly go up if you can throw rock, paper, and scissors. Because if you're throwing rock and someone throws scissors, sweet, you win. What happens if they throw paper? Or what happens if they throw rock? You need to be able to switch up. Gabriel Davis allows you a better chance of throwing all 3 because of his versatility with his skill set, with his frame, with his mentality, all that kind of stuff. So that's a big piece of how he was able to step up, right? Because of his ability to function in the run and function in the pass. I've got another graphic that I want to show you guys. I'm going to pull up another one here. I like bringing the graphics into this episode. We use them on the film room. I thought it would be cool, especially because there's so many metrics, tied to Gabriel Davis. This one is more numbers for everyone, not splits, just numbers on the year. But I think, again, they are very telling and they're very interesting. So on the year, 74 targets, 45 catches, 791 yards. He had a 17.6 yards per reception, which is 4th amongst wide receivers with at least 30 targets. I use 30 targets as the filter for a lot of this, not because it's an arbitrary number, because it narrows it down to about 119 wide receivers. I think 30 targets gives you a pretty good sample size. Like, I don't know, that's roughly anywhere from 3 to 4 games. So that's somebody who is a fixture on a roster and is seeing meaningful snaps. And I think you get a solid sample size out of that. So again, Gabriel Davis, 17.6 yards per catch, which is 4th amongst all wide receivers with at least 30 targets. He had an average depth of target of 15.3, which was 8th out of the 119 wide receivers with at least 30 targets. 67.6% of his targets came 10 yards or more. Breaking that down further, 41.9% came between 10 and 19 yards. 25.7% came 20 yards plus. So again, intermediate to deep, working those bigger chunk plays, which explains why he had an average yards per catch of 17.6. Then breaking that down even further, 39.2% of targets came in the deep and intermediate center. So 10 to 19 yards and 20 yards plus. That's what the deep and intermediate center is. So 39.2% came in the deep and intermediate center, and that's broken down with 24.3 in the intermediate center, 10 to 19 yards, and 14.9% deep center. So you get a guy who is able to be successful against these split safety looks. 2 high safeties were able to take advantage of the middle of the field. He was a guy who's able to get vertical, right? With his skill set, with his size, with his speed, that's underrated. Going to some more numbers on this slide, on the right side of the graphic here, he had 11 touchdowns, which was tied for 6th amongst all wide receivers. And then you look at some of the positional versatility that he had. 67.9% of his snaps came out wide. so in an outside receiver role. 30.9% of snaps came in the slot. And all these numbers, right? He only had a 47.7% snap rate. For reference, Stephon Diggs led the Bills wide receivers with an 81.6% snap rate. We didn't see a lot of Gabriel Davis in those first 12 games, as I mentioned in the previous slide, right? It was once the Bills leaned into this running attack, once they had the injuries to Beasley and Manny Sands, they were really able to find their identity in the back end of the year. That's when Gabriel Davis saw this massive uptick in snaps and role and usage and all that stuff. But these numbers are legitimately very strong. You see a guy who just jumped off the page when you see him on film. But then you look at these metrics again, this is very legitimate, like 17.6 yards per catch, fourth amongst wide receivers with at least 30 targets. That's legitimate. This is the dude that's a legitimate deep threat. This is because of sample size or he had a couple huge plays. This is because he is significantly. He is legitimately getting downfield and making significant plays, big plays, toxic differential plays for Mr. Eric Quinn. He moves the sticks. He gets you those chunk plays in the intermediate and the deep area. That's a huge piece for this Bills offense because that's how they like to work. The average depth of target being 15.3, you're seeing where he likes to live. And that's also good balance with how this Bills offense works. You've got Gabriel Davis. You've got Stephon Diggs. Diggs can function deep. He can function short. He can run every single route in the book, all that. You've got Cole Beasley, who works more around the line of scrimmage. Cole Beasley's average depth of target is 5.6, third lowest out of the 119 wide receivers with at least 30 targets. You've got all these different weapons in your arsenal that gives Josh Allen a good flavor, gives him a good balance. That's even more so why Gabriel Davis's ascension last year helped the Bills in 2021, but also why it helps in 2022 because he's able to fit a role that this team needs as that vertical threat, as that big play guy. And you wouldn't expect it given what his 40 time is. He only runs a 4.54 40, but that's part of the reason of why I like to say it all the time, of why being fast and just having straight line speed, that doesn't mean you're going to be a vertical threat or a deep threat in the NFL. And also, comment from Tanya here, Gabe Davis's toe drag swag is so strong. Oh, he's had just some of the most beautiful catches these last 2 years, all the way back in week 2, 2020 against Miami, that diving catch, both catches against the Colts on the right sideline and the left sideline in the playoffs last year, just really hits it. Good comment here from Cliff saying that Davis has a knack of finding the soft seams downfield. He had a strong year. If you're looking at the film, if you are looking from a metrics perspective, and his ability to get downfield. Oh, Jason with a really good comment as well, saying that Davis is so good on the scramble drill. Yes, he is. He's good at functioning off script with Josh Allen. He understands how to get open. He understands how to make himself available for Josh. And comment here from the Buff of, what up, Steve? He says, you just wonder if he'll ever get that trust as a wide receiver too. I'm extremely thrilled that you mentioned that. That is literally my next point here. And Steve follows up and says, permanently. That ties in to my next point because that's another reason of why his snaps increased, why his targets increased, why he had the big plays that he did, is because of the trust in him from Josh Allen. So Josh Allen, talking about Gabriel Davis after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, he said, quote, that's a guy that obviously has been limited in his opportunities this year, but he shows up when he has to, and we're going to need more of him going forward. Follow up with that. If you guys remember, Gabriel Davis had that really good 4th and 4 conversion against Tampa Bay on the drive at the end of regulation that should have won the Bills the game if the referees knew how to call pass interference. But he had that 4th and 4 catch where he comes short of the first down marker to make the catch and then turns, gets square, and drives his man and gets the first down. It was a tremendous individual effort from Gabriel Davis. Josh Allen, speaking on the 4th and 4 conversion, he says, quote, talking about Gabriel Davis, quote, he runs a stop route and the ball, the momentum, pulled him back behind the change. And the fight for him to, one, catch the ball, turn his shoulder, and have the awareness that he's got to go and get a couple more yards. It was an unbelievable play. I think if we pull that victory out, that's the play that gets remembered of saving that game. I'm going to take a drink of water. having the trust of your quarterback is arguably the biggest sign of being a good wide receiver in the NFL. If you're a guy that your QB looks to situationally or regularly, if your QB knows, like, okay, I need somebody who can go get a bucket, I need somebody who can win right now, where's this guy? That's huge, right? Because quarterbacks don't just trust anybody, especially on a team like the Bills. Dawson Knox, who Josh Allen has a great rapport with and who has proved to be reliable for Josh in 2021. Stephon Diggs, who was one of the best wide receivers in the entire NFL. He and Josh have a great relationship. Cole Beasley, who is tremendously reliable, has a great rapport with Josh. Third and Cole, as that joke goes, right? Reliable guy for Josh, someone who he has a great rapport with. It's not like Josh is bereft of options. It's not like, well, of course he has to go to Gabriel Davis. He has no one else to throw to. He's got guys who he's tight with from a personal and relationship standpoint, but guys who he also has a good rapport with on the field and guys who are productive and legitimately good in the NFL. He's not short of options. He could go somewhere else. Gabriel Davis earned Josh Allen's trust in that Tampa Bay game. I think by earning Josh's trust, he started to earn more of Daboll's trust, Ken Dorsey's trust, and you couple that again with his ability to function in the run game, wear multiple hats, be effective wearing those multiple hats. Big thing for him. So I like that comment about Davis from Buff Hub here, saying you just wonder if he'll get that trust as a number two. He has the trust from Josh Allen, which is a huge, huge, huge piece. Josh Allen is a stud. He knows what's up. This offense goes through Josh Allen. When there's plays being drawn up, right, before a game, or they're installing for the week and they're putting a package together against this team that they're playing this week, or they're installing in training camp, or they're in game and there's a timeout. It's like, all right, cool, Josh, what do you want to run? All of these things coupled together. The fact that Gabriel Davis has Josh Allen's trust, that means he's going to get more looks. He's going to get more targets. He's going to get more snaps. He has a heavier role in this offense already. What you saw from Gabriel Davis in the back end of 2021 is what you're going to see going forward, because he has the trust of the most important person on that offense and the most important person on that team in Mr. Joshua Allen. And I wanted to go back to Gabriel Davis's vertical ability, because I think this is a really key point. I think a lot of people just think in order to be able to be a vertical threat or a deep threat in the NFL, you have to be fast. You have to be a guy who runs a 4.3, or you have to be a guy who runs a 4.40. You have to have like 95 or above Madden speed. You have to be able to cook. And that helps, right? It helps to be fast. But running vertical or running a go route, running a 9 route, anything like that, no matter what you call it, it's not like you just run straight and you outrun the guy. There's nuance to running a vertical route. There's change of speed. There's body language. There's what your head is doing and where you're looking. There's what your hips are doing. There's your footwork. There's your timing. Getting vertical and being able to win vertical is much more than just, all right, cool, you're fast. Run. Doesn't work like that. And Brandon Beane knew that about Gabriel Davis. One of my favorite things in relation to Gabriel Davis is what Brandon Beane said on him. There's that embedded episode from the Buffalo Bills during that combine, and Beane is watching the receivers run their 40s, and he's talking there with Joe Shane, who's now with the New York Giants. And Brandon Beane's talking about Gabriel Davis during the 2020 combine, and he says, quote, "It's amazing how many good wide receivers there are in this thing. I like Davis. I hope he doesn't run too fast because he plays faster. You know what I mean? Just be 4.58 or something. He'll be fine." Gabriel Davis ends up running a 4.54. So, oof. Beane was so close. Beane just wanted to be 4.58 range. Gabe Davis runs a 4.54. Beane wanted him to run that slower 40 because he wanted teams to look away from him. He knew about his play speed. That's a huge thing, right? Play speed and, timed combine speed are not the same thing, right? Cooper Kupp is a tremendous example, and I just saw comment here from Jason Taylor saying that Kupp is not a speed guy, and he had almost 2,000 yards. I think he eclipsed it if we count the playoffs and everything like that, but Kupp's a really good example. Kupp's 40, I think, is 4.62. Not a burner, but he has tremendous change of direction. He's great in the 3 cone, and he's a tremendous route runner. He's smart. there's a lot of things that work in his advantage. But yeah, he's not a straight line speed burner guy. He's not somebody who you think is going to dominate, right? If you just look at his 40 time, there's so much more to running, to getting vertical and being a deep threat than just having a good 40 time. There is that play speed, and that play speed comes from being able to process what's going on, having an understanding of your role, understanding, and if we're looking at it from a receiver's perspective, understanding your role, understanding what the defense is doing, understanding this look, understanding the coverage, being able to function with your quarterback and understanding what the play is and what the design of the play is, and then the route running nuance, the change of direction, the footwork, the body language, the tilt, using the sideline to your advantage, being able to maintain leverage, avoiding hands, all these types of things. There's so many things that go into it. It's more than just, run a fast 40. Brandon Beane knew that, right? Which is why he wanted him to run a slower 40. So maybe it would throw some people off the scent and throw people off Gabriel Davis's trail, which it did. Bills got him in the 4th round. Haven't looked back. Solid. And this is that piece that I also wanted to talk about of how Gabriel Davis became wide receiver 2. When you're watching, right, Gabriel Davis's film. Also, great comment here from Mark. I want to pull that quick. He says about Gabriel Davis, he's quicker after 20 yards. He takes a while to extend. Long speed, I think Joe Shane called it. Yeah, that being able to get like vertical like that, that is that long speed. And you've got different guys, right? Like you've got guys who are quicker than they are fast. Guys who are fast in 10-yard, 20-yard bursts, but maybe trail off after 20. And then you have guys who, once they get in their stride at 20 yards, it's like running a 100-meter sprint. Their form kicks in, their strength kicks in, their stride kicks in, and they take off. We get a drink again. Forgive me. But Gabriel Davis, when you watch the film, this is what really caught my eye, especially against Kansas City in the playoffs in that divisional round. I think the plays they're going to get the most press are those touchdowns. The huge 75-yard bomb, the one that should have won the game with 13 seconds. The one before that to put the Bills up, the 29-26, all that kind of stuff, right? Those are the ones that get noticed. But the ones that really tell the story of how Gabriel Davis progressed are those other ones. The ones, good comment here from Steve. Steve says, Davis seems to do really well at getting inside leverage. I like that. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Well done, Steve. It's like you're peeking into my notes here. His ability to win at the line of scrimmage, his ability to get inside leverage, his ability to not tip or sell his routes, his ability to add nuance to his routes. He has a route against Kansas City in the divisional round. Bills are on their right around their own 15. I think it's the drive. It's the drive where the Bills go up 29-26 because Stephon Diggs gets open on this play as well, and Josh Allen goes to Gabriel Davis. But Davis runs like a 12, 15-yard hook route, like it sit. He gets and he sits. But he does it by selling like he's going vertical. Most routes from a wide receiver break around the 10-yard mark, give or take on average. So if you're kicking it into full gear and you're running a vertical at 10 yards, you really hit your stride and you go. If you're going to break and run a post or run a dig, it's somewhere around that 10-yard area, right? He gets to about like 8-9 yards, sells it, kicks it up into full gear like he's going vertical, and then takes 2 steps and gears down and pops back out and sits, and the defender gets run off. It's those little things, those little artwork things, those pieces that show you study and you work at your craft, right? We see all these videos every offseason of receivers running routes. Stephon Diggs has made it super popular. The training that he does with just all of his route running and everything and the footwork, and you see the bend and you see the precision and the hard, crisp routes. You see all that stuff, right? His footwork is tremendous. Gabriel Davis's body language is really strong on film, especially this past year for a second-year wide receiver who's still learning the game, who's still adjusting. Again, it's more than just speed and ability, right? Getting open, getting vertical, getting open in general. Route running is such a huge piece. And I think when people think of route running, they think of, okay, like, just your feet. You want to make sure you break down properly and you cut and this and that. There's so many ways to fool the defender, right? And sell a route. And Gabriel Davis does a good job of that. If he's going short or underneath, he'll sell you like he's going vertical. If he's going vertical, he can do a good job of selling like he's going over or he's going short. He doesn't give any tips. He doesn't give any tells. he really I mean, he does at times. Everybody does. No one's perfect. But he progressed in that area so much. And, oh, I like this comment here from Ethan. I heard Davis is an angler. He plays the receiver position really thoughtfully and deliberately like an expert fisherman. And because angling is a fishing term. That's really cool. I like that comparison a lot. I think that's really spot on. I've never heard of that or thought of that. I mean, I'm not a fisherman. That's really cool. Some other comments coming through. Scott saying no wasted motion in Davis. Mark saying he's a fluid mover too. That is very spot on. Comment here from Spin. Long speed is just players who lack that acceleration. Makes that 40 time deceptive from that aspect. All spot on. And there's also ways, again, your change of direction does help, but your change of gears, right? Even if you're not the fastest guy, if you can run at different levels. I remember a drill we used to do all the time. It's changing gears, right? So you'd run like 40 yards and 10 yards, you'd be at 25%. And the next 10, you'd be at 50%. And the next 10, you'd be at 75. And the last 10, you'd sprint full out. And it was all about teaching and training your body to run at different levels, to run at different gears and being able to change pace, being able to change your speed because you can fool defenders that way, right? Oh, I got to stop. Comment here from Ned. Ned, you're awesome. Thank you very much for your super chat and your donation. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Comment here from Ned. Ned says, so Gabe's value comes in his complementary blocking and receiving skills, ? Who is available in the coming draft or free agency that would complement those skills to replace, say, Manny or Cole Beasley? Fantastic question, Ned. If Beasley stays, give me Byron Pringle from Kansas City. Give me Deontay Harris from the New Orleans Saints. I think if Beasley stays, you're looking at Diggs, Davis, and Beasley. That fourth wide receiver, that complementary piece, is going to be someone who needs to have a versatile skill set, who can work inside in the slot, who can also work outside. They need to have a little speed to them. They need to be able to work short and over the middle, but also be able to get deep. They're also going to have to play special teams, whether it's coverage or actually returning. What's nice about Pringle and Harris, both of those guys tick all those boxes I mentioned, and they also offer kick return and punt return value. So I think that's what you look for. I think you look at someone who can play special teams, but you also look at someone who can line up in multiple spots. You don't want someone who is just a boundary receiver. You don't want somebody who's just a slot receiver. You want somebody who can wear different hats, who can function in multiple ways. That's what they look for. They look for a depth guy, kind of like a utility infielder type thing in baseball. Someone who can do a lot, get you out of a pinch, flexible, allows you to mix and match based on opponent and based on what's going on. If Beasley's gone, okay, if Beasley leaves, wide receiver takes a huge jump in priority. I don't think free agency is going to replace Cole Beasley if he goes. The Bills aren't getting Devontae Adams or Allen Robinson or Chris Godwin or any of these top-notch guys. Even maybe you could take a swing at a Jamison Crowder if Beasley goes. If Beasley goes, I think they address the hole there in the draft. And if that happens, I think first of all, there's really quality receivers in the NFL draft in the first 4 rounds that should be available. But I think if Beasley goes, the odds of them taking a receiver in round 1 jump tremendously. There's a lot of top-notch receivers in the draft this year. Very, very good top of the class, good depth from top to bottom as a whole. There's also, as I see the comment come through, the Isaiah McKenzie question. Does he come back? What does he come back as? I think him being the kick return and punt return guy, I'm still not a fan of it. I think his ball security and decision-making aren't there for that position, given how much of a high leverage position it is. And also, we know that if you're going to be used more in the offense, McDermott doesn't like to use you in the return game, right? I think that's also a detractor for Braxton Berrios. A lot of people talk about Braxton Berrios coming to the Bills. 1, I don't think he is what you think he is. Went over that last night in the film room. But 2, Berrios isn't going to be the guy who's going to fill in for Cole Beasley and also return punts and kicks. Sean McDermott doesn't like to do that. So depending on what happens with Beasley, that's where you go with. And going to this other comment follow-up from Ned, who says, great answer. Thank you, Ned. Great question. He says, is Beasley more valuable than many are giving him credit? Most definitely Positively, yes. Cole Beasley is still one of the best receivers at beating zone. He's still very, very good at beating man. I tweeted it out earlier. I think he had the third highest reception percentage versus zone at 81.3% and the sixth highest reception percentage versus man at 70%. I put out a bunch of clips this week of him beating man coverage and just getting you bucket after bucket and winning matchups, especially in that Miami game. Think about that, right? For people who you want to know how valuable Cole Beasley is, Gabe Davis obviously dominated in that Kansas City game. Think back to that Miami Dolphins game at home in Buffalo on Halloween. Miami was playing man coverage and just locking the Bills down to a decent degree. Cole Beasley, that game, had, I think, 10 catches, 110 yards on 13 targets. He won time after time after time after time, was winning in the slot, eating Nick Needham alive. People talk about the Isaiah McKenzie, performances against New England. Beasley did that too against Miami, right? I think Beasley is more valuable than people are giving him credit. I think people see him as, and if you're thinking of him, if you're concerned from an injury perspective, I think that's fair. He had the injury in 2020, he had the rib injury in 2021, that affected him. But healthy, he's still one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. And I know people are also, against him a little bit because of COVID stuff and, different off the field things, whatever have you. I recognize that. I don't care. You cannot let that affect you when you're grading a player or scouting a player or watching tape. And if I'm watching the tape, which I do a lot of, Cole Beasley is still a top-notch dude. And then you combine that with the advanced metrics and what you see, still a top-notch dude. And what's also funny, the Bills weren't a good yards after catch team this past year. I think we all know that. Cole Beasley led the Bills in yards after catch. So, again, which is even crazier considering he had an average depth of target of 5.6. Like, he got yards after catch. And that's also with him playing banged up. That's also with him missing some time and not getting a ton of snaps. So, I think he's a guy that you approach for a potential pay cut. I don't know if he has a ton of leverage on the open market. I would like to see that pay cut to give the Bills some more money. His cap hit is a little steep at, bear with me, $7.6 million this year. And then he's an unrestricted free agent the year after that. So I think you approach him for a pay cut. But yes, most definitely, Ned. I think Cole Beasley is much more valuable than people are giving him credit. And for all those, I said it on Twitter. I said it in the film room last night. Because a lot of people want Braxton Berrios to replace Cole Beasley. I understand he's fun. I'm a Miami guy, so shout out to the U. I like Braxton Berrios. He's not the route runner Cole Beasley is, and he struggles in man coverage, and he struggles against press coverage as well. He's not what Cole Beasley is. Cole Beasley is tremendously underappreciated in, I don't even want to say the NFL. I just think amongst Bills Mafia. I think, again, because of a whole bunch of off-the-field stuff combined with injuries and some recency bias and all that, I think people have this view of Cole Beasley, or they painted him in this negative light, and I do not think it's accurate, which is why I watched the tape to really, really confirm stuff. Oh, good comment here from Jason. Teams still often heavily game plan to take Beasley away, and it opens up other things on offense. Great point, Jason. Teams love to bracket and double team Stephon Diggs. You know who else they love to bracket and double team? Cole Beasley, which opens things up for other people. Same thing with Gabriel Davis. You see Stephon Diggs in that divisional round. It's like, oh, he only had 3 catches for 7 yards. He opens things up because the Chiefs have to pay so much attention to him. Just like with anything, if you got a stud, teams got to pay attention to that dude, which opens things up for other people and gives them opportunities. So yes, 100%. On that. Continuing some draft talk just a little bit while we're there. Dion Pawkins. Every time you like anything of mine on Twitter, it brings such a smile on my face. I think that's one of the most clever names, and it brings me joy. Plus, that little teddy bear is adorable. Garrett Wilson from Ohio State would be a dream scenario. Slot and yards after catchability. That's what I think you see the Bills go towards. If Beasley leaves and you go receiver in the first round, Wilson would be, I don't want to say the perfect fit, but would be a really ideal. I think you're looking at him. I think you're looking at Jamison Williams. I think you're potentially looking at John Mechie. maybe even Calvin Austin later. I think he's going to shoot up draft boards come combine and come testing. But there's a lot of guys that the Bills can really hang their hat on, and Garrett Wilson is one as well. Bum, bum, bum. Steve says, is Hodgins in the future plans? I don't know. Last year was an opportunity for him to get some snaps. He got hurt again. He's got to show out in training camp and preseason. I liked him more than Gabriel Davis coming out of college. His tape is really good especially for like a late round pick, but his route running, his footwork, his hands, his ability in the red zone, his catch percentage, he was in the tops of the nation, like with a lot of some of the best dudes in college football. Just like, I'm talking top 3 when it came to certain metrics that you just would not expect. And I would like to see Isaiah Hodgins take a leap. I don't know if he's going to. I think it's just too much of too many variables at this point. And awesome follow from Ned. I like anybody who understands my get buckets references. Ned says, Anthony, you're spot on. When he's on the field, it's hard to argue his ability to get buckets. I'd hate to see him leave. $8 million is still a deal. If Bean can negotiate that, he is the wizard. That's fair. Andrew says, Beasley is still great, but wouldn't it be better to have options at slot? He seems dependent on option routes and quick slants, but he does pair well with Knox. One, option routes are tremendously hard, and they're not easy. So the fact that he is that good at them is good. 2, he doesn't depend on options and quick slants as much as you think. Watch the Miami game is a really great one. Actually, even week 1 against Pittsburgh, he's running like post, like deep post. Like he's the one who's dragging defenders out of the box in man coverage and stretching the safeties. He's running like 30-yard posts in the middle of the field and taking guys with him to open up the underneath for other receivers. He's still much more capable than we give him credit for. Again, I think a lot of it came down to that rib injury. Dude was hurting. You could tell that every time he touched the ball, he was just like you could see that grimace on him. You could see the way he was lumbering on the field. He was not in a good way. And it wasn't like, okay, just grin and bear it. He was in physical pain that limited his mobility, both with ability to catch and his mobility with run after the catch and ability to take hits. I think that changed his game a little bit. But he can do everything. He can run every route in the route tree. He may not have that long vertical speed where he's going to beat someone flat out man coverage deep, but he can shake dudes at the line and get open and then still separate and get you 5 to 20 yards in a quick hiccup. So yeah, I don't think there's a ton of better options at slot. Yeah, maybe if you can go out and get Chris Godwin, but he's coming off an injury. We'll see what he looks like. I also think he's going to get paid this offseason. But yeah, and see, this is a good comment from Chris, to wrap that up with Beasley. You can't just move on from Beasley and bank on the draft. That leaves only Diggs and Davis. Yeah, there's a lot more question marks if Cole Beasley leaves, which again, either way, if he stays, if he goes, it's why Gabriel Davis's rise in 2021 was so important, because you at least have a solid 2, right? You have somebody who can function in the run game, someone who can function and run a variety of routes, someone who can be a deep threat. I also think Gabriel Davis can function in the short game. I think part of the reason we saw him so vertically based and so deep was, again, because of the makeup of that roster. Manny Sands occupied that role again. Manny Sands on the year, 16 yards in terms of average depth of target, which was 4th amongst receivers with at least 30 targets. That was Manny's role. Manny gets hurt, phased out a little bit. Gabriel Davis takes that role. He starts going vertical a ton. That's what they were looking for out of that wide receiver 2. Diggs does it all. Beasley works the short to low intermediate. That other wide receiver works that vertical, that deep intermediate to deep, right? The 10 to 19 and the 20 plus regularly. And that's the hat that Gabriel Davis wore. I think he's capable of more, given the nuance and the route running that we saw from him on tape this past year, and really in the back quarter of the year, just doing stuff that you see from veteran receivers, from guys who get praise as good route runners, guys who get praise as veterans and students of the game and who hone their craft and all those proverbial adages. He's someone who made a big jump, and he started adding those subtleties and those nuances to his route running, his ability to fool defensive backs in his route stem, again, making them think that, he's kicking into full gear, he's going vertical, let me turn my hips, he stopped and he's wide open for a 12-yard hitch. That's not good. Him running these routes and then again earning the confidence of Josh Allen, I don't think it can be understated. And that's how Gabriel Davis became wide receiver 2 for the Buffalo Bills. He did it because of his nuanced route running and his progression in terms of the craft of being a wide receiver. He became wide receiver 2 by being able to function in the run game, being able to function in a variety of looks when it comes to blocking and play action, his ability to allow the offense to not tip their hand, to allow them to stay versatile and multiple and execute when being versatile and multiple, not just breaking tendency and being multiple for the sake of breaking tendency and being multiple, legitimately being able to throw out different cards and being able to execute with all of them. He is a big piece of that. When you've got a receiver who can reduce down and crack block and wipe dudes out and wash guys down, and the next play can give you that same look and be reduced and go to crack down and then fake it and roll out with the QB and be wide open for your mobile quarterback who's got a rocket for an arm, it's tremendously important. You add all these things up, the route running, the ability to function in the run game, the trust of Josh Allen, all those three things together have really culminated in making Gabriel Davis wide receiver 2 for this Bills team, at least as of right now, right? I don't see them making a big move that really threatens that status. I think he can wear the mantle of wide receiver 2 for the 2022 season, especially given the makeup of this Bills roster and then who's out there in free agency. I don't think really threatens that from a monetary perspective. They can't bring in a lot of the guys who would take over as a wide receiver 2 or even a wide receiver 1 in Devontae Adams' case if he came to the Bills. So I think I expect to see Gabriel Davis wearing that crown for wide receiver 2, wearing that hat, and continuing to function in vertical ways, but in a variety of ways. I would expect to see even more versatility in his route running this year for 2022, and continue to expect to see him blocking his butt off, him making it look like he's going to block and then releasing on routes with play action. It's a big piece of his game. And let's go to some comments as we start to wrap up here on Disguise Coverage. Any last questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, flood them into the chat. I want to get to as many as I can. Spin says, I think we bring back Beasley and focus on our holes on defense this offseason and O-line. Our defense is what kept us from progressing in the playoffs, not our offense. I like where your head's at. I think receiver is a need this offseason. I think offensive line is a need this offseason, especially the interior offensive line. As of right now, needs 1 and 2 for me are cornerback and defensive tackle. So I'm right there with you. Charles, what's up, Charles? Charles says, depending on what happens with Beasley, it makes adding a wide receiver a real need versus a luxury. Exactly. I don't know if you're here for the beginning of the episode, Charles, but that's exactly what I said. Beasley's that domino effect, right? If he stays, you've got Beasley, Diggs, and Davis. Whoever you add at wide receiver into the draft or free agency, it becomes a depth piece, a chess piece, a mismatch piece for you to use, right? If Beasley goes, you have to acquire a wide receiver who's going to see meaningful snaps and play meaningful high leverage situations for you. It changes the dynamic completely. Spot on. Taryn says, who do you go to first? Isaiah McKenzie? I don't know why I said that. Who do you go? I think I combined it, McKenzie and Beasley. Who do you go to first, McKenzie or Beasley for contracts to come back? McKenzie's a free agent as of right now, so he's not on the team. So technically you'd have to go to him first in order for quote unquote come back because he's a free agent. In terms of contract or making things work, I go to Beasley. I'd still take Beasley over McKenzie. I like Isaiah McKenzie. I like what he does. He and Beasley do different things, but given what they do and the space that they operate in and the hat that they wear, I take Cole Beasley. Comment here from 13. If Beasley stays, how many games will he play next year? Can he give us 12 good games? That's the question. That is the question. A healthy Cole Beasley is still a monster. but that healthy is an if, a legitimate if. I think that's the question. 12 good games, be 12 out of 17. Kind of gave us around that this year. I'd like to see him used less in the regular season. I'd like to see him get more meaningful snaps, third downs, and against certain opponents that really dictate the matchup. I would love to see him almost on like a load management type of thing to be able to keep him fresh and then just let him out of the stables and run against teams that are better or teams where the matchup really favors it, or come playoff time and just let him be fresh and go. Comment there from Charles. Yeah, I'd love to restructure Beasley and keep him. Brandon Beane said it. I didn't write it down, but he said it in his end of year presser that, he said, Cole Beasley's under contract. And as of right now, like, I forget what the exact verbiage is, but he says, like, we plan to bring him back. Like, there haven't been any conversations in terms of Cole not coming back. And granted, there could just be GM end of the year speak, but I don't think Cole Beasley leaves this team. I think what you get is Brandon Beane approaches him for a not restructure, right? Because that adds years and changes the money. I think they approach him for a pay cut. And if he takes it, he stays. If he doesn't take it, I think they might say goodbye. We're going to see what happens. But I think he gets approached for a pay cut. And then we're really going to see what happens with that. Why says great show. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Any other comments? Chris says, these questions are exactly why I'm going after Godwin. Slot locked up. Hope Davis eventually becomes wide receiver 1 when Diggs is past 30 years old. Here's the thing, though, Chris. Like, I would love Chris Godwin. You're not going to get Chris Godwin. He's going to get paid. And he's coming off a knee injury, which is still a question mark. But he's going to get paid. He is tremendous. I don't want to go and check his market value right now, but if somebody wants to type in right now, Chris Godwin, spot track, SPOTRAC, and then click on the market value button and see what his market value is, it's going to be up there. Devontae Adams' market value, I think, is $25.2 million a year or some number like that. Godwin's probably pushing 20. Either way, he's pushing money that the Bills do not have. I would love to add Chris Godwin. I wouldn't even think about it because he's not going to be added. The Bills don't have the money. Even if they can make the space, they're going to use it to fill other holes in bigger areas of need than they are adding a pure luxury piece like that. I love Godwin too, but I think the odds of here coming are low. Oh, Terrence, I'm sorry. I have to bring this up. Terrence says, I like Beasley, but I see he and McKenzie is the same. They are not the same at all. Isaiah McKenzie cannot do what Cole Beasley does. Cole Beasley cannot do what Isaiah McKenzie does. Isaiah McKenzie can run deep overs and get vertical more and has that longer speed in addition to the short area burst. He does not have the route running or the understanding of how to leverage coverage in zone like Cole Beasley does. Isaiah McKenzie wins with speed and athleticism. Cole Beasley wins with his head and wins with technique. McKenzie runs away from guys, is able to get an angle, get some leverage and go. Cole Beasley creates his own leverage. He is a walking mismatch against a variety of coverages. They do different things, which is why they have games where they're each successful in different ways. McKenzie's type of speed and his skill set, running those deep overs, it's great against single high defenses and man coverage defenses like the New England Patriots, which is why Isaiah McKenzie ate over and over again against the New England Patriots. They're different. They're different in their skill sets. I know you may see them as they're both small. They're both slot receivers. They both have, diminutive statures and frames and all that. They're two very different receivers. They are not a like for replacement. And that goes, again, vice versa and on both sides. Beasley can't do what McKenzie does. McKenzie can't do what Beasley does. All those things considered, I'm taking Beasley over McKenzie. But yeah, they are not the same. Oh, Ned says, excellent show and commentary as usual. Thanks, Anthony. Thank you, Ned. Thank you for your donation and your kind words and your commentary. And you just being here. I appreciate the live engagement. Thank you very much. I have to go back to the chat updated, but I have to go back to a comment. I have to go back to a comment from Mr. West Ashley. Cornerback and DT ? I bet we get a new outside linebacker. Who's going? Milan, I'm going to guess you're saying Tremaine Edmonds is going. I don't think that happens. But we'll see. Either way, right now, corner is a bigger need because the Bills are needing to be scheme versatile in the secondary. Also, Tre'Davious White's a question mark for the start of the year. There are some reports that have him coming back in late October or November. So, one, you got to step your corner game up. Two, even if Trey was completely healthy, you still need a better corner. Two, three, if you get a bigger two-gapping defensive tackle or better and or bigger defensive tackle play, Tremaine Edmunds and Matt Milano might get unlocked because they won't have blockers to stack and shed, and they won't have linemen and guards and centers and other linemen up in their kitchen getting into their pads all the time. So corner and defensive tackle make the defense better as a whole because of their individual value in a vacuum, but also because they want what they mean from a beneficial standpoint to the rest of the defense. I feel like you probably don't like Tremaine Edmunds, which is fine, but cornerback and defensive tackle are by far a bigger need than right now. And there's Brian with a great comment. We need a nose tackle in this draft, day 2, who can challenge to start and develop in the coming year. Give me someone who can two-gap. Give me Devontae Wyatt. I love Jordan Davis. Give me Travis Jones. Give me somebody who eats space, who two gaps, and makes it difficult on offensive linemen getting to the second level, getting to Tremaine Edmunds, getting to Matt Milano, getting to Taron Johnson. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Any other things? What? Comment from Vlad. Am I the only one who believes that defensive end is still a huge need on this defense? No, you are not. I also agree. I just think they address it in free agency. There's some guys you can kind of patchwork together in terms of increasing your pass rush productivity. That's what they need. They need edges who can win one-on-one and who have technique and pass rushing plans. They need consistent pass rush from the edge. Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison were their two best edge rushers this past year. Both of them are free agents. Both of them might not be coming back. If Jerry Hughes comes back, he's still the best edge rusher on the Bills, despite what a lot of people want to say or think. The film speaks to it. The metrics speak to it. I know his sacks aren't there, but his pressures are, and a variety of other things. Pressures are very valuable. I'm not saying they're better as sacks, but they are valuable. That's a whole other conversation for another time. But yes, I think defensive end, specifically edge, if we're going to label it in that way, is still a huge need on this defense. I think it's still fair to say there's questions around AJ Epinesa, Gregory Rousseau, and Carlos Basham. And those are your three edges right now. And they're young and unproven, and they still have question marks. So I agree with you, Vlad. I think it is a need. I just think they address it in a manner that's easier than some of the others. What other comments? I see a lot. Yeah, Chris Godwin dude's gonna get Mike Evans money. Chris Evans played Captain America. See some other things that we spoke about. Oh, $70.5 million for Chris Godwin, or $16 million per. Yeah, that's JD coming through. Godwin is worth $18.1 million per year, according to SpotTrack. Traz coming in and saying the same thing. Yeah, Bills are out of that market. I would love them to be in it, but no. F.A. Obata is also a free agent right now. I know some of the names. I'd like him to come back, but he is a free agent as of right now. I'm also not very high on Carlos Basham. I didn't like the pick last year. I'm not going to judge anybody on a rookie year or even 2 years in. I want to see year 3, but yeah, I think the Bills edge grouping is a significant area of need. Good comment from Mark. AJ Klein replacement. I think there will be one. I think he gets released for the cap savings. They re-signed Tyrell Dodson. I think you can patch together Klein's role with Andre Smith and Dodson, or maybe they go after somebody in the draft later round, or even in free agency, bring someone on, develop him, and go from there. Comment from Spin. Would you prefer Jordan Davis or Devontae Wyatt if you had a choice? For those of you who don't know, these are the two Georgia defensive tackles. They are both fantastic. I would prefer Jordan Davis because he fits my two-gapping monster of a man role. Wyatt is nice because Wyatt can still two-gap. Wyatt can play, he's not the ideal size for a nose, but he can play nose. He can play zero. He can play one tech. He can play three tech. He can line up in a variety of ways on your front. I've even seen him lined up at four tech in a 4-eye position. I like Wyatt as well. Wyatt also offers you a little more 3-down versatility. Jordan Davis he can get you some stuff on 3rd down, but he's still more 1st and 2nd. But I would prefer Jordan Davis slightly, but I really like them both. Anything else? I think that's going to wind it down for us here. As Andrew says here, wide is the pick. You know it. Davis has gone by 15. I said it last week on Twitter. My prediction as of right now, I think it'll probably change based on what the Bills do in free agency, based on what other teams do in free agency. It'll change everyone's draft boards. My pick right now, based on how the Bills are constructed, based on how the other teams are constructed in the NFL, right now, my pick for the Bills pick at pick 25, my prediction is Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle from Georgia. So that is what I am thinking in my heart, in my head as of right now, based on how the Bills are constructed, based on the moves I see happening in free agency, and based on how I see the draft board shaking out as of this moment. And that's going to do it here. I'm going to throw up the Toodles, you guys banner, because that means we're going to start to wind down. As always, chat was jumping tonight. I appreciate you guys stopping by and your engagement, your questions, your thoughts, your comments, concerns, your kind words, the thoughtful stuff. Like, I love being able to engage and talk ball with anyone and everyone. And I enjoy a lot of you guys are regulars. I recognize the names all the time. So thank you very much for the kind of engagement you have. There's a level of thoughtfulness and there's a level of thoughtfulness to the statements and questions that are presented. And I appreciate that greatly. It's much more enjoyable for me. And I just really appreciate you guys stopping by. And thank you very much for anything and every ways. I'm fumbling my words as I read things from the chat and speak at the same time. Appreciate you, JD. Thank you very much. Andrew says it too. I was just about to get to it. Please like the video. If you're here now live, I appreciate you, Mark, saying good show, mate. Keep going, workhorse. I am the workhorse of Cover One. Thank you very much. If you're here now live, please drop a like right now or on your way out. I know it sounds corny. I know you may think it might not mean much. I say this every week. A like goes a tremendous way in terms of helping myself and the entire team here Cover One track and trend in front of more eyes. It helps the algorithm. It helps the numbers. Please, please, please drop a like. Also, please drop, a subscription. Set your alerts and notifications for Disguise coverage. That would help a ton as well. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, drop a review on Apple Podcasts. Give a comment, review, a star rating, anything and everything. It goes a long way. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about Disguise coverage. If you liked it, if you didn't, as I say it every week, tell your enemies. If you thought this show sucked, that's fine. Tell someone you hate to try and ruin their day. I'll take the listen and maybe they'll become a fan and we'll go from there. Thomas saying, brilliant job. Thank you very much, Thomas. Yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. Get in here earlier. We always pick up steam like 20 minutes in as we start to go through. I know 7 isn't, the most ideal time, but it works based on the schedule of Cover One and my work-life balance and everything like that I've gone out with other things. So 7 on Wednesdays is what the slot is. Get here earlier. I want more engagement earlier. I want to see that number up earlier so we can talk, have more engagement, more conversation. I know I get through the episode and then have a lot of the chat and the back and forth towards the back end. I love to get it started earlier. Guys, get in here earlier. More engagement, more live viewers early. We get more conversation going. We get our creative juices and thought processes flowing. That's it. But I appreciate you guys so much for being here live and all. More kind words. Andrew says, thanks, Ann. You're the Gerald Talley of Cover One, the most underrated host. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And Traz saying, I can't always make it live, but I always try to hit the YouTube. Great show and amazing content as always. Thank you very much, Traz. Again, I appreciate all you so much. Thank you very much to anybody and everybody who watched live and joined me and rode with me here live on Disguise coverage. If you didn't, that is completely fine. If you're watching later, listening later, whatever have you, thank you for your listen. Thank you for your view. Thank you for any and every ounce of support that you give me and this team. It is tremendously appreciated. We say it all the time. You've heard it from my lips a ton. You guys truly don't know what you mean to the team. And speaking for myself, how awesome it is to have this platform, and it's only possible because of you guys, and I'm tremendously thankful for all you. Appreciate you, Jason, saying thanks, and have a great rest of your night. You too, Jason. Spin with some positive feedback saying, I like the 7 p.m. time because all the other YouTubers post at the same time, whether it be 8 or 9. That's what I try to do with and playing the long con there. Rate, review, and subscribe to Disguise coverage. Drop a like on your way out. Go check out some One Pie Pizza. As I mentioned, the pizza's delicious. And if you get some, it'll be tomorrow now because they're closed now tonight on Wednesday. But get some tomorrow on the 17th. Mention that Cover One sent you. Get some free potato salad with your half-sheet pie purchase. Get some homemade blue cheese while you're at it. Great people, great pizza, all that stuff. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones all stay safe and are doing well. If you have any more questions or thoughts or comments for me, get at me on the old Twitter. Find me at pro__ant. That's pro, 2_ANT. I also check the comments on YouTube. So if you got a comment or a question or anything you want to leave later, I'll get back at you through there if I can. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you as always. Take care. I will see you next week. And as always, go Bills.